My name is Susan Masino, and I'm the author of Family Tradition, Three Generations of Hank Williams. Actually, that's my fourth book.
Okay.
The last book that I wrote is called Let There Be Rock, The Story of AC/DC, which is now in 10 languages.
Oh, wow.
Very, very proud of that. And the books before that are Rock and Roll Fantasy, My Life and Times with AC/DC, Van Halen, and Kiss. And the second one is called Famous Wisconsin Musicians, which has a wonderful little foreword written by Mr. Les Paul himself.
Yes.
And he's, of course, a Wisconsin boy, so very proud of him.
I actually own My Life and the AC/DC Let There Be Rock
Oh,
books.
great. Okay,
Yes.
good. I hope you enjoyed them.
Oh, my goodness. You have no idea. I went through a very heavy AC/DC streak when I was a senior in high school. And I read it rather religiously, I'm not going to lie.
Aw, well, it's a very funny story of how I ended up writing that, because I met the band back on their first American tour in 1977. And never dreamed of, writing a biography of the band. I kind of thought, let everybody else do that. But I was actually hired to write that in the summer of 2004 by Omnibus Press, who also does their music tablature books.
Oh, okay.
So they were aware of Rock and Roll Fantasy, the first book that I wrote, and they were aware of my friendship with the band, and so they actually kind of, found me and offered me the job. And it was really hard, because knowing the guys made it harder.
Oh, okay.
Because you want them to like it.
Oh,
and that was the hard thing.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. Well, I feel extremely privileged right now to be talking to you. I'm a huge fan.
Oh.
And
well, thank you. And I'm just as privileged to be, to have known those guys as many years as I have, and they're every day. They put a smile on my face every time I hear those guys.
Definitely, yeah, they definitely do. I saw them in concert here a few years back when they toured Minnesota, and I couldn't believe that they're 60-some years old and they can still rock.
Oh, yeah. I know. I saw them twice in Chicago on the Black Ice Tour. I saw them twice in Chicago, once in Milwaukee, and once in Italy.
Oh, wow.
So, yes, I was very fortunate to be invited over, actually, to do a book signing, because my book is in Italian over there. And it's funny, because a fan got a hold of me, and he said, well, they're playing over here in May and do a book signing. And I'm like, oh, yes, I would love to do that. What an idea. But, I don't have that kind of budget. And he went to the bookstore first. And the bookstore went to the promoter, and the promoter went to the Bureau of Tourism for Northern Italy, and they are the ones that flew me over there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow, that sounds like a trip in itself.
Oh, it was amazing. I got to see them outside on Phil Rudd's birthday on May 19th, 2010, in front of 47,000 crazy Italian fans, and it was like being in a dream. It really was. I was just amazed, because I'd always wanted, someday to see them play one of the big European open stadium dates that they do, and I got to do that. It was pretty much the highlight of my life, basically.
And that's kind of saying a lot, considering that you went and hung out in the green rooms with AC/DC and Kiss and Van Halen.
Oh, yeah, yep. And Cheap Trick and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and Ted Nugent. And I was really in the right place at the right time back in the late 70s, when I started out at just a little newspaper here in Madison, Wisconsin. So we were just seeing the explosion of that arena rock, I guess is what you'd call it, in the late 70s, when all these bands were on their way up. And when I first met AC/DC, they literally were riding around in a station wagon with a 3-man crew that were following them around in a truck. So nobody had any money back then, and it's just amazing to see how successful they are now. It really makes me proud.
I remember reading that you started out just graduating from high school and kind of falling into journalism. Do you want to expand upon that a little bit?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. When I was a kid, I loved to read. I
Mm-hmm.
was really, really voracious reader, and I always wanted to be an author.
Mm-hmm.
I always thought, boy, that would be something someday to write. And I was literally like, I was working at a printing company after high school, and I was going through actually a divorce when I was very young. I was only 21 at the time. I had gotten married right out of high school, and there was a local music paper here in Madison, and I was kind of trying to impress somebody by writing an article for that paper. And one thing led to another. I wrote an article. I reviewed a band, actually. Kind of started out on a very sarcastic note because I was in a club one night, and the band was talking about the paper, the local paper, and one of the band members said something like, "Oh, I don't read that kind of junk,"
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there thinking, boy, you're lucky nobody's here reviewing you. And that's when, the proverbial light bulb went off above my head.
Mm-hmm.
And I grabbed a napkin and a pen and started making notes. And I wrote a very sarcastic article about the band and sent it to the paper. And I sent it anonymously because I thought, well, even if they print it, I don't know if I want my name on it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what started everything for me. They printed it. It caused all kinds of controversy. The band wasn't happy. The band manager was not happy. The editors of the paper were kind of involved in a mystery because they didn't know who sent it in.
Mm-hmm.
And so after it got printed, and I kind of saw the fallout that came afterwards, I called them up and needless to say, they thought it was written by a guy. I'm going to take that as a compliment. They thought it was a guy, and they were kind of like, "So you wrote this?" And I said, "Yeah, I did. I wrote that. That was, yeah, that's mine." Mm-hmm. So they said, I asked them if I could do something more for the paper, and that's kind of what started it. Mm-hmm. I started reviewing bar bands and working my way up to, doing stuff in the stadium kind of thing. And I started interviewing the bands, and they weren't doing that. They were reviewing bands, and I'm, of course, I'm thinking, hey, I want to talk to the band
mm-hmm.
directly.
Right.
That's no fun, go and review a band and just go home. Nope. So I kind of got into the, I would talk my way backstage and get an interview, at least get a couple of quotes,
mm-hmm.
from one of the band members. And one thing led to another, and pretty soon that's what I'm doing. I'm covering Kiss and Cheap Trick and everybody, Van Halen. I mean, we were actually the first newspaper in the United States to put Van Halen on the cover.
Really?
Yes, we were. Warner Brothers were very happy with us at the time. But this is, we're talking no cell phones, no computer, mm-hmm. No videos, that kind of thing. So back in the late 70s, the newspaper, print was very powerful.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
Unlike today.
Yeah. It's kind of going downhill today.
Yeah.
I'm actually kind of surprised that they still print it.
I know. Yeah, it's hard. It's a hard business to be in.
Mm-hmm. Obviously, you started journalism, everything like that. What do you do with yourself nowadays?
Well, I'm a stay-at-home mom still. My son is in his last year of high school, so I'm not going to be able to stay that much longer. Mm-hmm. But I've done a lot of things. I mean, I wrote, Rock and Roll Fantasy back in 2001. Mm-hmm. And I put that out as an ebook before, people were like, they didn't even know what that was. And that kind of launched me into my next, book deal, which got me the AC/DC deal. And then I ended up doing the Hank Williams book. And now I spend a lot of time, on the computer promoting. I'm going to actually be going to Nashville next month.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to be doing a book signing for my book, Family Tradition, at the Country Music Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited about that. But I'm, when I'm in between projects, I always feel like, I'm never going to work again.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people feel that way,
Yeah.
When you do so much work on something and then you have time off and,
mm-hmm.
Then all I can think about is, I got to get something started again.
Mm-hmm. What was it like, growing up back in the 70s? You kind of started out doing the whole interview thing with a newspaper down in Madison. what was that like running around meeting all these bands? Was it really hectic or the best thing in the world?
Oh, it was both. I mean, it was crazy. It was. I would love to do a movie about it someday because I'm with the newspaper downtown, and I'm pretty much the only woman, that is on staff. And we ended up getting a couple other ladies, that did artwork and did some reviewing, but I took horrible flack for, ooh, we know how you got that interview, and yeah, what did you do with him, and all of that. And I was so determined to be, a serious journalist. And now when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, I turned down so many people. It was just I should have gone the other way. I would have had a way better book, 30 years down the line. But it was we knew at the time that we were seeing history. It must have been, I think I do write about this in the book, that it must have been like being back in the 60s, when the Beatles and the Stones and everybody, Eric Clapton and all those guys were coming up. And here we are in the middle of the Midwest in the late 70s, and all these bands are, really on their way. I mean, Ted Nugent was a pretty big star at the time, but, Kiss and especially AC/DC, I mean, nobody knew who they were. When they first came over here. So we knew, we used to make jokes about who was going to write the first book. And I took, I wrote journals, I kept calendars, and I knew at the time that we were witnessing history. And it was just an amazing thing. It was like living in a dream. It wasn't work. It certainly didn't feel like work.
That's the best way to be, when you can go to work and it's not work.
Oh, yeah. No, I loved hanging out at the paper and, going to the shows. And, one of my most infamous weekends was reviewing Kiss and ending up at a party with them at the Edgewater Hotel, where I was up until, I think, I'd say maybe 7 or 8 in the morning. And then I came home and changed clothes and packed a bag and ran down to Milwaukee to hang out with AC/DC for the next 2 days. So it was a lot of fun.
It definitely sounds like it. I'm a huge AC/DC fan, and then I'm not gonna lie, I started watching Gene Simmons' Family Jewels on TV, which is proving to be interesting so far.
Absolutely, I love him. Even though I ran away from the man, I love him.
Ran away.
He's a great marketer. He knows how to make money. But I did. I ran away from him at the party that night. It was scary.
I can see that.
yeah. He was very scary, and I was determined not to end up in a room alone with him somewhere.
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So I did. He chased me down the hallway of the hotel that night.
Jeez.
And I ran out an exit door and kept running. So.
Oh my goodness. I wonder what he'd say if you were telling everybody that now.
Well, as a matter of fact, I mean, talk about small world. Right after that happened, AC/DC actually opened for Kiss for, I think 5 dates in December of 1977. And after I did that, I did run away from him, literally. My friend who was my go-between, he was a roadie for AC/DC. He and I ended up being really good friends and pen pals, actually. He used to write me and call me every week for about 3 years after I met him. And he called me one night when they were, I think, in Indiana with Kiss, and I think it was REO Speedwagon. Somebody else was on the bill, Styx or somebody. And he called me, from a payphone backstage. You can hear the band, blaring in the background. And he's like, "What did you do to Gene Simmons?" And, and I'm thinking he's heard, all kinds of things, so I don't want to admit to any of it. I'm just kind of like, well, why would you say that? What are you talking about, And he's like, "What did you do to him?" And I said, "I ran away from him. Why?" And he's like, "He's telling everybody about you." So here he is on tour with AC/DC and telling people, "Yeah, there's this crazy blonde journalist in Madison, Wisconsin. If you ever go there, you got to meet her." And AC/DC laughed and said, "Oh, Sue, yeah, we know her." I guess Gene laughed even, twice as hard because he was shocked. I mean, women were trying to climb in the windows of the hotel, and here I'm running from him.
Oh,
so
too funny.
Yeah, well, I could have ended up on Family Jewels. Well, what was I thinking?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, maybe.
You never know,
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. I was just so determined to be serious
Mhm.
and to behave myself, and
Mhm.
I was, of course, given many opportunities to not do that, and I still held my ground. And
Mhm.
as I say now, if I hadn't, 30 years later, AC/DC wouldn't have me backstage, to talk to their wives and children
Right. Mhm.
if I had been one of those girls. So
Oh, definitely. Yep. Respect goes a long way, I find,
it does,
in
yes.
this business
It's
anyway.
paid off. Yep.
Yeah. Do you want to tell me about meeting those guys, AC/DC and Kiss, back then? I mean, from what I've got, through different media centers and things like that, you always think, oh, they're wealthy and they're rich, they're snobby or however you want to, categorize them. Do you want to just tell me a little bit about the guys, like just their personalities, what did you find there? Was it nice to be hanging out backstage with them, or was it kind of iffy, or
Oh, it was, well, the first day that I met them was on the day that Elvis died,
oh,
August
okay.
16th, 1977.
Mhm.
And Elvis was kind of my older brother's generation, so
Mhm.
I wasn't a huge fan, but I was sad, of hearing his passing. He was so young; he was only 42, and so that's all they were playing on the radio. It was Elvis songs and all that. And I was driving past the paper that I was helping out, and something told me to stop and get another assignment.
Mhm.
And so I pulled over and I went in, and the editor, one of the guys that ran the paper, he literally was hanging the phone up. And I stopped in and I said, hey, Gary, how you doing? Just wanted to see if I could, help you guys out with anything coming up. And he said, well, I just got off the phone with the promoter from Milwaukee. They were called Stardate at the time. And he said they got a band downtown and they kind of need a gopher, somebody to come down and help out with the dressing room and, get drinks for the guys and stuff like that. You want to do that? And I said, yeah, I'm like, oh, I'm gung-ho. I've got an assignment. And so I'm like, yes, what time? He says, well, get down there by 4 and, there's no pay, but you could probably get a friend in for free. And I said, okay, that's good. And I was running out the door and I turned around and I said, oh, yeah, what band is it? And he just kind of shook his head and he goes, I don't know, some band from Australia. They're called AC/DC.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, that's weird. Okay, whatever. So I go down to the club and the band is at dinner and I meet the road crew and I hang out with those guys, and I went and got some Blue Nun wine at the liquor store for the singer, and I fixed, the trays up, for snacks and all of that. And I read a little bit of their promo because, there's nothing to do. So I asked the promoter, I said, what do you got on these guys? And they gave me this promotion that, they weren't pretty. Their pictures were not pretty. and it said that they had started brawls. They claimed, anyway, that they had started brawls from one end of Europe to the other, So then I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I agree to do here? I mean,
Mhm.
this is not probably not where I should be.
Mhm.
And so I'm up in the dressing room, which is a little loft, and it was a bar downtown called the Stone Hearth, and it was only again. I still have the poster for it,
Mhm.
and I see that the band has come in now, and they're coming upstairs into this little dressing area, So I'm literally backing out of the room, saying, there's drinks and snacks, and if you guys need anything, just come on downstairs and get me, and I'll help you out. And as I'm doing this guy walks up to me, and he's got shaggy hair, and he's got tattoos up and down his arms, and he walks right up and he sticks his face right into my face and screams, "Sit!" And I just, I kind of held my breath, and I backed up a little bit more, and I grabbed a chair and I pulled it over and I sat down, and I'm like, oh,
Mhm.
like, oh my God. And he walked over and he poured a couple glasses of wine, and he came back over and he handed me a glass of wine, and he says, hey, I'm Bon Scott. You must be Sue. And
Mhm.
I said, yeah, how did you know that? And so then they started making jokes about the promoter told us that you were here to do whatever we wanted, and they were all laughing and thinking it was so, like,
Mhm.
oh, and they had really thick accents. So, of course, half of the stuff they said to me, I really couldn't tell what they were saying. And they were just funny. They were just teasing and making jokes. And So, I hung out with them, and Angus, didn't say a word, and Malcolm was very nice, and Cliff was the new guy. He had just joined the band only a couple months before this.
Mm-hmm.
And, and Bon was, he was always trying to make you laugh, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if he was in the room with you, he was going to make you laugh or do something crazy. And so I hung out with them. I had a really nice time doing that. But I'm thinking, I wonder what these guys sound like. I mean, their promotion says they're, all this, and they're big. I should be all excited because I think they were talking about, yeah, you guys, you're going to love us, and I'm like, we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go downstairs, and they get ready to start playing, and they came out on stage, and they launched right into Live Wire. And I literally, it sounds cliche to say this, but I mean that the hair on my arm stood straight up.
Mm.
And I kept walking backwards until I walked, I made it to the wall across from the band, which was not that far away. It wasn't that big of a club.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I'd seen Black Sabbath. I was, a fan of all these bands, Pink Floyd, all these great bands. And when I saw AC/DC that night, it was like, Jesus himself had shown up. For a rock and roller, I was in shock. And I told them that afterwards. I said, you guys are going to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that was funny as hell. They're like, oh, yeah, right, And I know that people sometimes don't believe this, but it is true that I did say to them, I said, someday, it's going to take a couple years. I said, I don't see this happening immediately, but give you guys a couple years. I said, someday you're going to be as big as the Rolling Stones.
Mm-hmm.
And they thought that was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. And Angus literally pulled his shoe off and stuck his foot up in my face and said, oh, does that mean I can buy me some new socks? And I said, yeah, Angus. I slapped his foot out of my face and said, yeah, Angus, I'm sure someday you'll be able to buy yourself some new socks. And so we still laugh about that comment to this day. As a matter of fact, when I saw the band, the very beginning of the Black Ice tour in October of 2008, it was only the third night of the tour. No, it was November 1st, actually, that I saw them. But I said something to Malcolm about that. I said, hey, what about that? I told you someday you're going to be as big as the Rolling Stones. And he laughed and he says, oh, I don't know about that, but I do know we blew him off the stage at the SARS benefit up in Toronto. So we still laugh about that comment.
Mm-hmm.
And, needless to say, it became they are the only band actually in the world that has ever co-headlined with the Rolling Stones.
Really?
So, yes. So I guess I was pretty accurate with that.
I'll say. Goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it still amazes me to this day, and I didn't know that they were big fans of the Rolling Stones, and I remember even that comment kind of flying out of my mouth thinking, I wonder why I chose that band, and then I find out later that, they're huge fans, and of course, the Stones were one of their idols, and
Mm-hmm.
so it's become very funny, but now, 34 years later, we still laugh about that comment.
Definitely. Oh, goodness. That sounds like so much fun.
Yeah, oh yeah, and the band, I mean, to this day, the band is still as sweet as they ever were. It's amazing that they're that successful and, that wealthy, and they still, I swear to God, they're still wearing the same clothes. I haven't seen any new jeans on those guys in over 30 years, so, they've saved millions in wardrobe.
Yeah. Even though with their massive amount of success and things like that, do you still think they have that beginning humbleness about them? Or
Yeah,
is it?
I do.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. No, they do. I mean, I've seen many bands that have become, very famous over the last 30 years that, barely remember who you are or,
Right.
you want to talk to me now. And you could send Angus and Malcolm out in the crowd afterwards, and if you didn't know what they looked like, you would never know who they were. I mean, they'd be just hanging out, smoking a cigarette, talking to somebody. I mean, they are they have not forgotten it all. I mean, they worked a long time before they started making money.
Mm-hmm.
They really did. They were on tour, I believe, like 7 solid years before they really started seeing money come in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So they have not, I don't think they've forgotten that at all. They're just the sweetest guys, and still to this day, as sweet as they ever were.
Well, that's good. I like to hear it when bands keep that sense of, this is where we started out type deal. That's just a personal thing with me, but...
Oh, yeah. No, I agree. And it's funny. I hate to say this, but a lot of the English bands are more like that than the American bands have been.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the
Definitely.
American bands, they get to a certain level, and then it's kind of like, oh, I don't have time to talk to you anymore. And then the English guys are like, hey, how are you? You want a beer? I mean, it's just it's very different mindset, I guess.
Yeah, it is, and I can contest to that. I just actually got back from Scotland.
Really?
Yes, yeah, just a little while ago, about a month ago or so, I got back from Scotland. Only spent 2 weeks over there, but it was absolutely amazing, and the amount of just politeness that they have over there and kind of humble modesty is amazing comparative to over here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, and I've always wanted to go to Scotland, because Bon Scott and Angus and Malcolm were all born in Scotland.
Oh, great, yeah. Yeah.
So that's a dream of mine to go there. But, they have a complete different mentality toward people. They're, so much more giving, and I actually went to Belgrade, Serbia last year.
Okay.
And I found the same thing of their graciousness and how humble they are and appreciative of everything they have, and would share their last breadcrumb with you, kind of thing. I'd like to see more of that over here. I really would.
So since we just talked about AC/DC, do you want to talk about Kiss or Ted or anybody else, or do you want to continue with different questions?
Oh, well, go ahead. Throw some questions at me.
Okay. Maybe actually you can answer this for me. I believe it's Ted who wears the raccoon tail.
Yes.
Why?
Oh, my God.
I've looked it
Ted
up.
loves his dead animals, I'll tell you that now.
Okay.
He loves to hunt. He's a true hunter. He eats what he kills. You got to hand him that at least.
Okay.
And he used to just, he's so funny because he comes off as, well, and I guess he is now probably a lot more arrogant than he really is, but he actually is a really nice guy and very polite and very smart man. But when he goes on stage, he's crazy. He's a crazy guy. He puts on his raccoon tail and his his white spandex pants with the suspenders, and back in the day when his hair was halfway down his back and stuff, and he's funny. He's just a funny guy all the way around. I get a kick out of people that get really upset about stuff he says, because it's just like, that's Ted. Ted does not suffer fools gladly. Let's put it that way.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for answering that one for me, because, lo and behold, I've looked it up on the internet time and time again, every image that I come across, and I could never really get a straight answer. So now I know.
He's a very, very, I remember when he was in Damn Yankees, I interviewed Jack Blades, and Jack was talking about how him and Tommy Shaw went hunting with Ted, and he's dead serious, and I mean dead serious about hunting, and they were out there screwing around in the woods making too much noise, so Ted literally ditched them.
Oh.
And just left them in the middle of the woods. They didn't know where they were. They didn't know how to get out. And I just laugh at that, because it's like, you were not there being a serious hunter. He's totally going to ditch you, and you're lucky if he doesn't shoot you. So, just count your blessings that you made it out of the woods alive. So,
obviously, you said that you went to a party with Gene Simmons, but I guess watching him on TV, and obviously I'm a different generation than all of this. But just kind of watching him on TV, I almost get a sense of arrogance about him. Does that kind of hold true, or is that just the media making him appear that way?
Oh, no, absolutely not. No, Gene, I would say Gene thinks he's the greatest human being to ever live.
Oh, geez.
And, I mean, hey, he's got the money to back it up now, so who's going to argue with that?
Oh, yeah, of course.
But he was like that, back at the party. I mean, the reason why I ran away from him is because before he showed up at the party, there was some rumors around that he hit on some woman and she was there with her husband. So, of course, her husband didn't appreciate it.
Well,
so he had the couple thrown out of the party.
Oh.
So when I found out about that, I'm just like, oh, my God, don't piss off Gene or you're going to get thrown out of the party. And, and I admire the fact that, he never went down the road of drinking and doing drugs and, doing all the things. I mean, I guess sex would be his thing, his women that he collected over the years. But he's always been that way, that he thinks that, he is in the greatest rock and roll band in the world. And he is like, yes, the greatest rock star to ever live. And, now he can back it up with his money. So I have no argument with that.
Definitely. Well, yeah, I mean, I think his money is well-deserved. And his fame is definitely well-deserved.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, he's worked hard for it.
Oh, definitely.
The man has been out there on the road for over 30 years. So, he's another one now that he can still do it. He can still get up on stage and walk the walk, and I admire that. I think that's fabulous.
Yeah, definitely. I applaud those guys, and even the Rolling Stones. I mean, they're older than AC/DC, and they can still pull it off. Not as well as they used to from videos I've seen, but they can definitely still pull it off, which I think I think is an amazing feat.
Oh, it is, and being on the road, I couldn't even handle that part of it, much less all the performing they do.
Right.
But just to be on the road and be in a different city every other day, and it's a huge marathon of being able to do it, and that's why with AC/DC now, those guys, I mean, they work out and. I think Brian still drinks, and I think Cliff drinks, but I know Phil and Malcolm and Angus don't, and they have to take care of themselves. Otherwise, they absolutely couldn't do that.
Well, sex, drugs, rock and roll.
Yes.
But does that really truthfully ring true in, the backstage area? Like, obviously, there are some bands that will do coke or something along those lines, but is it really as prominent as the media makes it seem?
Yeah, I'd say so. Absolutely. I think I said this in my book. It's like we didn't have anything to worry about, much less, if you caught the clap, you went and got a shot of penicillin. I mean, there was, AIDS, believe it or not, AIDS was a diet candy.
Oh, okay.
It was actually a diet medicine or whatever you want to call it at the time, and there was no internet and no cable TV, and so going out to see live bands, that was a very big thing to do back in those days, and the thing for me being one of the only women a lot of times backstage is that I would be one of the only chicks back there that wasn't in, stiletto heels and, mini skirt and all the makeup and the hair and everything. I was kind of a tomboy, and I would be, in my jeans and my boots and, barely no makeup and everything. And that was like the only way that I could differentiate myself from the rest of the ladies because they're, they definitely were back there to have a good time. And I know that, now today people kind of, I think it's not as, it's more undercover kind of than it used to be.
Yeah.
It used to be just, insane. I mean, we're talking, Van Halen, oh my God. I mean, the parties that those guys had, I mean, yes, everything going on all at once. A great circus.
I bet.
Yes.
I bet. On the light of, you just going backstage in a pair of jeans and sneakers, did you kind of find that you were fighting in a man's world, so to speak?
Oh, God, every day. I mean, every single day. Every time I went back to the paper and had an interview or whatever that I was working on, I constantly got picked on about, oh, yeah, we know how you got that interview. Like they were getting interviews, but apparently they weren't. They didn't need sex to get their interviews, but since I was a woman, that's what everybody expected is that, oh, that's why he gave you an interview, right? And I'm not saying I didn't use my looks to get places, because I definitely did that.
Mm-hmm.
But I was smart enough to do that. But I mean, but I constantly got picked on.
Mm-hmm.
I was always being picked on about, how I really achieved that interview, or why that band liked me, or, lots of things. Like one night I was backstage waiting for Emerson, Lake and Palmer to show up.
Mm-hmm.
And they were fogged in, I think, so they flew in late, and they came backstage. And I was, that's one of the bands from when I was in high school, listen to Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and oh my God, they were like geniuses to me, and I was thrilled to be there and to cover the show, but all I wanted really was, that interview to put into my article. And I'm waiting backstage with, the ladies. And they walk in, and it's so funny. They walk in order: Emerson, Lake, and Palmer. One right after the other. They go into their their individual dressing rooms, and pretty soon this roadie comes up to me, and he's got an English accent, and he's like, "Excuse me," he's like, "Would you like to have a glass of wine?" And I said, "Sure," and he's like, "Follow me." And I followed him into a dressing room, and we came in, and there was, a little thing of tea, and there was flowers, and there was a little keyboard set up, and he poured me a glass of wine, and he said, stay right here, and I will, check back with you later. And he walked out, and I turn around, and here Keith Emerson walks in a towel out of the shower. And he had obviously picked me out when he walked into the back of the Coliseum that night. And of course, being the idiot now that I am, and I look back, I'm just like, oh my God, because right away I'm like, hello, Mr. Emerson, hi, I'm Sue, I'm here from the paper, and I'd love to do an interview with you. And he just kind of laughed, because it was kind of like, okay. So needless to say, he left that night with somebody else. But I did get an interview the next day at his hotel. He was very sweet, and turned out to be, a great article and all that. But that was one of the times that I was literally like, picked out of the crowd, and I didn't follow through. So I do regret it now. I swear to God I do. But yeah, it was a lot of fun though. Back. I would love to. I feel sorry for journalists now that have to do everything over the phone. Because we used to wait. We used to go see the show and see the band, and they'd be all sweaty, and they'd be done with the show, and they'd invite you right into the dressing room, and you'd sit right there, and everybody have a beer, whatever, and turn on your tape recorder and get your interview.
I think nowadays that only happens on an extreme local level. Like, I've been able to meet bands and things like that and have them come into the studio here and talk with them. But it would never happen in a million years if I tried to go to our big theater down there and try to get inside.
Oh, I know, yeah. The security nowadays and everything, and the lists, and the people that you have to go through to get to that point where you're even on the list, kind of thing. And yeah, it's pretty crazy. And I'm so grateful that I got to experience the rock and roll world when it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it does sound a lot of fun, and I'm a little jealous, but
well, it's funny when have you seen the movie Almost Famous?
Yes.
That when the movie starts out, that's kind of that was my life, only it was Cameron Crowe, and he was a guy, and he lived on the West Coast, and I was in the Midwest, and he was a couple years ahead of me, but that was my life, waiting backstage, got my tape recorder in my bag, hoping to talk to somebody. I had to laugh when I saw that movie, because I was just like, oh my God, we were doing the same thing, only he was out there.
Yeah.
So it's very much like it was, though, of like journalists, waiting. You're all waiting to grab somebody or run into the right person or that kind of thing, and it takes all the fun out of it now, actually.
Yeah. I still feel very lucky to actually be talking to you, though.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm just very been a very lucky person, being in the right place at the right time, and I'm probably one of the biggest AC/DC fans on the planet. And some people, said that I wrote my book "Let There Be Rock" like a fan, and I'm like, yeah. What did you expect exactly? So, and luckily the band likes it, so that's
all right.
that means a lot.
That's always good. That's always good when they like it.
Oh yeah, well, and I hadn't seen the band. That was the funny thing is, I see them when they come out on tour, and it'd been like 7 years from the Stiff Upper Lip tour to the Black Ice tour. So when my book came out, I had sent one to Brian because I know where he lives and stuff. But Angus is in Holland, and Malcolm lives in London, and they both have houses in Australia. So I wasn't really able to, I didn't want to just send it to their management. So I thought, I'll wait and see them on the road. And so I go back in the dressing room on the night of November 1st, 2008, when they first started the Black Ice tour, and of course, they act like we just saw each other a week ago, which is so funny and so remarkable. And I sit down next to Malcolm, and he turns to me and he goes, "Me wife bought your book." And my heart just literally stopped. I mean, I just, for a second, I was like, oh, no.
Oh.
And of course, he's going to pick on me. And I looked at him and I said, "Did she like it?" And he goes, "Yeah, she loved it." And then it was, then it was cool. But of course they, I'm sure they planned to do that because they're both very funny guys, and they love to. I'm one of the only people that probably get away with picking on them. Everybody else is afraid to talk to them, and I'm like, one time I was I was backstage and I couldn't get back into the dressing room until I finally just walked past all the security and went and found the tour manager, and he took me back into the dressing room, and Angus was like, "Oh, there you are," because I wasn't anywhere to be seen for like over an hour after the show. I just went off on him, and I dragged him over to the doorway, and I pointed at the circus down the hall, and I said, "Do you know what it's like to try to get to see you?" I said, "Do you realize how many people you have out there stopping people from seeing you?" And then I said something like, "Do you think you could get a little more famous? Because I think the Pope has got to be easier to see than you are." And he just burst out laughing. I mean, we both just cracked up, and and then there's a lot of people that would be afraid to do that, but I guess I go back far enough that I don't care.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, they can take it. I know they can.
All right. So, writing about your experiences with AC/DC and Van Halen and Ted and all these different bands. Was it liberating in a way, getting them onto paper, just kind of getting your feelings out there?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, when I, as I said, when we were in the middle of it, we always teased each other about, who's going to write the first book. And when I turned 40 was when I wrote that book, because I got to the age of 40 and I thought, am I just going to talk about it, or am I actually going to do it?
Right.
And sitting down and, and of course everybody wants to hear, the stories about, the night with Alex Van Halen and I smashed our heads in an elevator door at the Sheraton Hotel. Please do not do that. I do not recommend anybody doing that. But I had told those stories so many times that it was really great to sit down and actually put it on paper and get a book out of it, because now it's there. It's there for whoever wants to read it, and it's true. And, there was actually a guy on Amazon that wrote this really bad review of it saying, "Oh, lies, and all these are outrageous lies." And I'm like, no. No, every single word of it is absolutely true. I actually did and some stuff is not in there, so I left out a few things. But other than that, everything is in there, and it was an amazing thing to be to experience it. And I'm very proud that I got it, put into a book form that people can read it. And I think some people really get a kick out of being able to kind of feel like what it was like back in those days.
Definitely.
Because it is, it's over 30 years now. It's really hard to realize, to believe that that many years have gone by.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing that time does fly.
Oh, it sure does.
It definitely does. What do you think has changed from obviously from back then to now, obviously computers come into play. You can send information immediately instead of waiting for somebody to, write it out or type it out. But what has really changed in the media world for you?
I think, well, the thing, too, about everybody can do it now.
Mm-hmm.
So, which is kind of cool in a way, but it just kind of blows me away that, you go see a concert, like, let's say when I saw AC/DC in Milwaukee in April of 2010, the night that I got back home to my computer, I could actually see most of the songs on YouTube.
Oh.
From people, that are recording with their phones or whatever, and then they go home and they post it on YouTube. So it's an amazing thing, but then it kind of takes away, like, back when I was a kid, seeing your idols, your people, like me seeing Black Sabbath, when I was in high school. Oh my God! I mean, what an amazing thing that was for me. Now, you have people doing, commercials on TV. I mean, you see rock stars doing everything, and it kind of takes away all the mystique and all the, the specialness of being able to get up and see them close and in person. I think that we've kind of lost that because you see them everywhere. You look everywhere. They're in magazines, they're on TV, they're in reality shows, they're in, God forbid, celebrity rehab. I mean, you see them all over the place. And back in those days, it was just so much more special, I guess.
Yeah.
So I guess I love the fact that, yes, you can see it immediately and everybody can go online and, write their own reviews. But, again, then it just kind of, takes some of the specialness away from it.
Back to your book. Did you ever expect, I mean, obviously in the beginning you wanted to be an author, you wanted to write, but did you ever see your books going the way that they did? Or did you think to yourself, I'll put this out here, maybe it'll get a couple copies printed, maybe not. Did you ever see it, going huge and doing book signings, all over the country?
I honestly didn't. I didn't think that what I wanted to do is write a book and see it in the library when I was a little kid. That was my dream of, like, someday I want to go in the library and actually see one of my books on the shelf. That to me was a dream come true. But to see, especially like the AC/DC book, Let There Be Rock, in 10 languages, unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, just unbelievable. I still, it's hard for me to grasp that, when I was in Italy and seeing the book, in Italian and going to Serbia. And it's so funny. The Serbian publisher went under, so those books are literally bootlegs.
Oh.
And which is so funny because I went into a store in Belgrade and actually signed the copies they had.
Oh,
because I'm sure my publisher didn't appreciate that because they didn't get paid, but neither did I.
Right.
But it's completely, and again, that is in it goes hand in hand with how much AC/DC is loved.
Right.
They're hugely popular. They're loved by everybody in every country on the planet. And to see my book be in that many languages and stuff, I can't even think of what I would do to top something like that. It's been a real dream come true for me. I'm in awe myself. I'm like, oh my God, they're reading it, and I get letters all the time from people. I still do. The book came out in 2006, and then we put out a new version in 2009 with a new chapter, and actually an audio CD is in the back of the revised version of that book, of the 30 minutes of me and AC/DC drunk and supposedly holding an interview. I don't really want to call it that because it wasn't. But I had no idea. And even with now the new book, Family Tradition, 3 Generations of Hank Williams, I was at the the Country Music Hall of Fame in Nashville 2 years ago doing research. And I was there with my sister, and I remember saying to her, God, if I do a good enough job, maybe they'll have my book in the gift shop, and next month I'll be down there doing a book signing at the Hall of Fame. So
oh, goodness.
That is huge honor for me.
Definitely. Oh, well, I absolutely adore the 2 books that I have by you, and actually never in a million years would I thought I'd be talking to you right now. So this is really amazing to me. I'm like, oh my gosh.
I'm a Wisconsin girl. I'm not hard to find.
And
I really am not.
Mhm.
I guess I'm the living proof of somebody that followed a dream
Mhm.
and made it happen.
Mhm.
And for kids out there nowadays, my son is 17, and I tell them all the time, even the most impossible things are
Mhm.
possible if you believe in them.
Right. Mhm.
So, for musicians or DJs or, journalists, people out there that want to do something, want to follow their dreams and
Mhm.
see something great happen in their lives, I totally believe that it's possible because
Mhm.
I'm living proof of it.
Mhm.
I just, followed what I loved.
Mhm.
And I kept, every time I quit, I kept trying to quit the music business many times, and something would something would be thrown at me about, hey, you want to do this? And I'm like, oh God, I hate to turn that down.
Mhm.
And now it's 34 years later, so I guess follow your
Mhm.
dreams and believe in yourself, because you can do whatever you want in this world.
Mhm.
If you put your mind to it, it's possible.
Well, thank you for that inspiring quote.
Thank you. Thank you for enjoying it.
Yep, no problem.
All right. Thanks, Crystal. I had a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you a tons. It was amazing and tons of fun. Thank you so much, Sue.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.